All right, how about now? Can you guys hear me? Okay, so here's what happened this morning for GME. We knew we had the hourly trigger right here at 25.47. So I'll just remove this so you guys can see. And then the hourly velocity coming into the day was negative 0.03. And when we broke above the hourly trigger, it was negative 0.01. So that told us that this wasn't exactly a runaway setup yet, because when you have negative velocity, it means even if you break above the hourly trigger, price is going to want to pull back and test it before we can have a full runaway move. So the time right now in New York is 10:08, and at 10:30 we're going to get a new hourly print. Now at 10:30, as long as we're above the hourly trigger at 25.47, at 25.47, then the hourly velocity is going to flip positive. And once that flips positive, we should be able to have a nice runaway move to the upside. So I want to show you guys the 5-minute velocity for a second. So you can see over here a great example of bearish divergence. So price made a high of 26.09 here, and the 5-minute velocity was 0.065. And then when price came and made this new high of 26.18, you can see the 5-minute velocity dropped from 0.065 to 0.057, and that told us that we are not ready for a runaway move to the upside. But look at what happened here. On this move up, all right, we were dealing with negative hourly velocity, so that's why price wanted to come back to the hourly trigger. But you could see that with each consecutive high, velocity made a new high as well. So this looks good. As long as, price can remain above the hourly trigger at 25.47 for another 20 minutes, then we can rip. You could also see the 1-minute trigger providing a nice bounce right here at 26.11, and now price is currently at the 1-minute trigger. So we're going to see how this plays out. We also have the 5-minute trigger that just crossed above the hourly trigger. So this is also something very important to point out. The thing with trigger crosses is that whenever you have a trigger cross like this, you always expect a counter trend move back down. And so here, as soon as the 5-minute trigger crossed, we have a counter trend move back down. Price wants to retest these areas before moving up again to the upside. So, but once that happens, we have the 1 and the 5-minute trigger above the hourly trigger, which is pretty bullish. And we're just waiting for another 20 minutes for the hourly velocity to flip positive. Everybody catch that? You guys have any questions on that? All right. Let's take a look at SPY. All right, so here you guys could see pretty good example of bullish divergence right here on this move down. See, price over here was 356.75, and the 5-minute velocity was negative 2.6. And then when price came down to make this new low, oh no, that's actually not bullish divergence, because velocity made a new low with price. So SPY is getting a little chopped up right here. Looks like it's setting up for a bear plane. So bear plane setup is when the 1-minute trigger comes up to test the 5-minute trigger, like this. So the 1-minute trigger will come up, and then if the 1-minute trigger rejects off the 5-minute trigger and doesn't break through, price usually starts coming down pretty hard. So let's take a look where everything's trading. All right, so we have SPY 358. GME selling back down a bit, which is normal. Nothing unusual about that. Now again, for the whole first hour of trading, we're dealing with negative hourly velocity. And so it's quite normal for price to pull back to these areas. We have 17 minutes for velocity to flip positive. And once that happens, we can start moving up. So Andreas asked if hourly velocity is based on time of the NYSE open, hence why it's the half hour instead of the hour. Yeah. So you could see this print, the last print of the day is a half hour. So from 3:30 to 4 p.m., the last half hour of trading. And then as soon as price opens, the next hourly print is calculated for the upcoming hour. So not much to look at here right now. SPY looks like we're just gonna have to wait to see if the 1 minute trigger crosses up or if it pulls back and comes down. All right, so 358.18. Yeah, so right now you can see SPY is below the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger, and the 1 and the 5 minute triggers are below the hourly trigger. So this is always going to be a bearish setup. I mean, you could see how long it's been like this. So, price sold down below the hourly trigger. Let's bring this up. Then I'll hop back over to GME. So you can see right here is when SPY sold down. And, if you short this break at 373, you never really have a reason to stop out of your trade, because even here when price pops below the 5 minute trigger, look at the 1 minute trigger, 5 minute trigger interaction. So you see how the 1 minute trigger rejects off the 5 minute trigger and then starts coming back down. This is really bearish. It means that price wants to test new lows. So if we were in this trade and we took a short below the hourly trigger right here, we would not have got stopped out here because the 1 minute trigger never crossed above the 5. And we finally would have got stopped out right here at 359. So when the 1 minute trigger crossed above the 5, if you guys can see that. So we could have been short since 373 and only stop out at 360 once the 1 minute trigger crosses above the 5 minute trigger. So let's go back to GME for a second. So again, really normal price action. We have the 5 minute the 5 minute trigger at 25.70. So that's going to be an important level to hold. You can see price right now at 25.88. I could take a look at UPST. I just want to show one more thing. So here's the Disky page. So we have the main indexes. So this is basically how we track the market. So the Dow Jones is the leader. Everything follows the Dow Jones basically. So a lot of times we have advantages of watching the Dow Jones and then knowing what the rest of the market is going to do. So the Dow Jones, if the 1 minute trigger crosses the 5 minute trigger to the upside here, then you have a bullish trigger cross, and the Dow Jones might be able to attack the hourly trigger. So that can tell us a lot about SPY, because SPY, we don't know if the 1 minute trigger is going to cross to the upside or not. And it can tell us about QQQ. So actually QQQ, you can see that the 1 minute trigger tried to break above the 5 minute trigger and rejected, and that's a bear plane. All right, so you see how the 1 minute trigger comes up to the 5 and then starts coming down. So that means price wants to move down to new lows. So that's not good for the QQQ, and you could see the reaction that price made. So let's take a look at UPST real quick. GME, again, we have about 13 minutes left until we can flip the hourly print. So by the way, this just tells you how strong hourly velocity is. So hourly velocity was negative, price broke through the hourly trigger to the upside, and it's now being pulled all the way back down to the hourly trigger. So let's take a look now at UPST. Okay, so UPST, let's first start at the hourly velocity. So we can already see some hourly bearish divergence forming. So notice how price is making a higher high. So over here the high was 24.06, and now price is making a higher high of 24.34, but the hourly velocity is not. So over here the hourly velocity was 0.115, and over here the hourly velocity is 0.110. So this is bearish hourly divergence, because if price makes a new high and the move is bullish, then hourly velocity would make a new high as well. And so when hourly velocity does not make a new high, but price does, that's your first bearish sign. Once you have 3 of these, then that means price wants to come back down and revisit the hourly trigger. So if I was playing this live and I was in calls, then my stop loss would be right under the 1-minute trigger. So let's say I took this break above the hourly trigger right here at 21.30. I would have stopped out right here at 23.47 when price sold below the 1-minute trigger. Then I could have bought back right here at 22.64 in this break, and I'll stop out below the 1-minute trigger, but I'd automatically be in profit at this point. So let's go back, take a look at GME 25.85, and we can see that price still did not sell below the 5-minute trigger. So this is bullish. If we want this move to keep going up, then we don't want to see anything below 25.73. Let's take a look at UVXY, because that also can help track the direction of the market. So, UVXY, we went long when price broke above the hourly trigger, and now we're trading at, 13.35. So this is a $2 move in just a couple of days, Thursday to Wednesday, in just about a week. So as long as UVXY remains bullish like this, I'm not sure how things will look for the market. That's the truth. So let's see if SPY can turn bullish and help out GME a little bit. All right, so SPY has a bit of a lag right now. Okay, so GME, really crucial moment. So you can see SPY is selling. SPY is selling down, and SPY got this bearish setup with the 1-minute trigger rejecting the 5-minute trigger. And that's dragging down, a lot of stocks with it. So yeah, SPY is selling hard here. I'm just going to post UVXY to the Discord real quick. Okay, so GME, this is really important. We're about to find out if the 5-minute trigger is going to hold or not. Okay, so we did lose the 5-minute trigger here. Yeah, thanks turnips. So we lost the 5-minute trigger, and now, hourly trigger at 25.47. So pay attention to this, guys. All right, we know we had negative hourly velocity coming into the hour, which means that even if price breaks above the hourly trigger, for the whole hour, the first hour of trading, price wants to be pulled back into the hourly trigger. And with price now at 25.63, basically price was pulled all the way back to the hourly trigger. So this is how, velocity can help save you on these, on these breakouts. But in 7 minutes, we're going to get our first hourly print, and if it's bullish, then we can be up and running again. So let's see how this plays out. SPY is catching a little bit of support here. So in general, I use a Nimoy to trade, but I also rely a bit on fibs. I found that fibs combined with a Nimoy is most helpful for me because it gives me, entries and exits. So let's see how these next 6 minutes play out. Remember, all we want to see is GME above the hourly trigger at 25.47. And then we're going to have a positive hourly print for the whole next hour of trading, which means that once we get a positive hourly print, it means that the hourly trigger wants to hold as support. All right, we got another 5 minutes. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so GME caught a bounce. That's really nice. So 25.77. Now, I want to show you guys something about how we take trades. All right, so this is really important. If you can take a trade right near the hourly trigger at 25.47, then you end up with a really tight risk reward ratio. So for example, if you buy this break above the hourly trigger, well, hourly velocity was negative here, so this wouldn't have been the greatest buy. But let's say price pulled down below the hourly trigger and then came back above. So you can go long at, let's say, 25.55 with a stop loss at 25.47 or 25.40 to be safe. And then what you have is an extremely tight risk for a possible tremendous reward. So what would our upside targets for GME be here? So what we do is we go to the 6-month chart, type in GME, and I'll show you how to find upside targets. So again, GME at 25.86 with 4 minutes left to the hour. So this looks promising for GME to get a positive hourly velocity print. So as long as GME can hold this level for 4 more minutes, we're going to have positive hourly velocity for the entire next hour of trading. And then that's when GME will be able to move a lot stronger to the upside because there will be no magnets pulling GME back down. If we take a look at the 1-minute trigger and the 5-minute trigger here, an airplane setup is really bullish. So that would mean if the 1-minute trigger came down to the 5-minute trigger and then turned up again, that's a really bullish sign. So let's see if we can get that here. Let's see if the 1-minute trigger can pull down to the 5-minute trigger. It'll look similar to, well, there's no good examples here, but we want the 1-minute trigger to come down to the 5-minute trigger and then bounce up and off it, and that leads price to new highs. That tells you in advance that the algo already decided that it wants to bring GME up. So let's take a look at the 6-month chart here. You can see the daily trigger throughout this entire period providing a blanket on price. So you see how as the daily trigger comes down, it's just acting like a wet blanket over price. But if GME can pop above the hourly trigger here with positive hourly velocity, then our next target would be the daily trigger at 27.28. And if we look at our velocity right here, so that's a 7.95% move to the upside. So if GME can, can hold this right here and pop on up to the upside, then we can expect a 7.95% move to attack the daily trigger at 27.28. Jeff asked, how often does the hourly trigger update? So that updates every hour on the hour. I'm actually getting a bit of a lag in Nimoy right now, which is a drop in 9 because I'm trying to show this live. Like SPY hasn't updated in 8 minutes. So for those experiencing lag, at the end of this month, the lag should be gone, which is, some good news. Right now, the API is from IEX, and that's what's giving us the issues, but we plan to switch over to Polygon, which will be live. So I'll keep you all updated on that. So yeah, SPY isn't really updating. GME isn't really updating, so we'll just sit tight for now. Okay, the good thing about this is that we know we know what the hourly trigger, we know what the hourly velocity is going to look like now, because in 1 minute we know price is above 25.47, and so in 1 more minute we're going to know, even if a Nimoy doesn't update immediately, we're going to know that we have positive hourly velocity. So Chandler asked, how are you setting option stop losses by underlying stock price? Webull only lets me set limits based on option price. You just overlay the options and underlying stock chart and predict price. So I just watch it, I don't use an exact stop loss. Sometimes I'll try to figure it out. Like, let's say I was buying an option right here. Let's say price was at 25.30 right now, and price breaks above the hourly trigger at 25.47, and I buy an option for $100. So sometimes I'll just put a stop loss at, let's say, $93, because I know that if price sells down back below the hourly trigger, it'll trigger my stop loss and I'll be out. I don't calculate it exactly to the penny. Okay, here we go. So right now, New York time is 10:30 and price of GME is above 25.47. So that means we're going to have positive hourly velocity for the entire next hour of trading. Now, with positive hourly velocity and price above the hourly trigger, that's when we can expect to start moving up again to the upside. So obviously we're going to need volume for this to fully work out, but let's see how it goes here. I'm just going to check in on the Discord. So the DIA does pull the market, so the Dow Jones. So let's take a look at what that's up to, so we can try to see where the market's going to go. Okay, yeah, so unfortunately, this happens sometimes where you just have a lag across the whole of Nimoy. So I can't really see exactly what the market is doing right now, because my last update is 10:23 and it's 10:31 right now. So we're about 8 minutes behind, but as soon as the lag goes away, we should be able to get a lot more clear picture of what's going on. So GME, all right, so we're still not updated. 10:22 was the last update. So nothing looks too exciting right now. GME is at 25.73, and the 1 minute trigger was at 26.07 10 minutes ago. So it's probably down about 10 cents to like 25.90, 25.95. So we're just waiting for an airplane. So to show you guys what an airplane looks like, I'll bring up the 2-week chart. And what's great about airplanes is that once you get them, there's no guesswork. Once you get an airplane with the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger, it means price wants to go up. And it's really that simple. So let's see if there's any good ones here. Okay, so here's a good one. So guys, pay attention to this. So you see how the 1 minute trigger right here comes down to the 5 minute trigger and bounces off. And you see how price rises up off that. So as soon as you get the 1 minute trigger coming down to the 5 minute trigger, as soon as it starts lifting, that's your go sign. That means that the algo's already decided to bring this up. And another great example is right here. So you have the 1 minute trigger coming down to the 5 minute trigger. It's pinning. So this is where they pin the price and they crush IV on options and they try to bore you out. And then as soon as the pin is released, you could see the 1 minute trigger turning up off the 5 minute trigger. That's a successful airplane, and price rises. And then we have one more right here. The 1 minute trigger comes down to the 5 minute trigger, bounces off, and as soon as it starts rising, that's your go sign. And you could see the really nice move that price makes to the upside. So we're waiting right now for something very similar. We're waiting for the 1 minute trigger to come down, tap against the 5 minute trigger. Okay, so here we go. Now we're only 5 minutes behind. So the 1 minute trigger, 26.06. I'll remove everything else so you guys can just see the algo working. So as soon as the 1 minute trigger comes down to the 5 minute trigger, I'm just gonna call it the one. There's no real great nickname for it, but okay. So Laura asks, how are you predicting that the hourly velocity is going to be positive? The price has been over the hourly trigger with negative hourly velocity for a bit. What makes this hour different? So great question. So if price is above the hourly trigger, if price closes the hour above the hourly trigger, then that's going to give us a positive hourly velocity print. So if I remove everything else but price and the hourly trigger, as long as price is above 25.47 when the hour closes, so at 10:30 New York time, 7:30 PST, 9:30 Central, that gives you the hourly print. So all you need is for price to close above the hourly trigger. Now the higher price closes above the hourly trigger, the stronger your hourly velocity print is going to be. Does that answer your question, Laura? By the way, how's the audio, guys? Because for some reason my mic wasn't working, so I'm using my desktop audio. Just want to know like if it's clear for you guys. Okay, thanks, Laura. All right, so again, right now, this is what we're waiting for. You want to see the 1 minute trigger just come down, bounce off the 5 minute trigger, and then move to the upside. Everything else in between doesn't really matter much. But I will say this, with positive hourly velocity, oh, okay, so here you go, guys. Here's our print. So you see how we went from negative 0.3 to negative 1.5 to positive, that just disappeared, to positive 0.03. So now 0.03 isn't anything incredible, all right? It's nothing strong, it's nothing to go home about. But if price sells below the hourly trigger during this hour, then we know it's gonna wanna pull on back up. So it tells us that even if price sells below the hourly trigger, it's gonna have a magnet and wanna move up to the upside. So this is interesting because SPY isn't selling, but GME, AMC, let's see, BBBY. So these guys are selling too. So this is a cool feature of a Nimoy. So I have access to a meme page. So this tells me that, you know, out of all the memes, 2 are long, 14 are short, and 5 are flat. So, you know, we don't exactly have great meme momentum right now. Here's a great example of a beer plane in AMC. So you can see that the 1 minute trigger came up to the 5 minute trigger, rejected and came back down, and AMC sold to new lows. So beer planes and airplanes are, you know, the best way that I have success with day trading. You know, you always want to, I definitely made a mistake this morning. I entered options, AMC weeklies on a break above the 5 minute trigger, and I didn't wait for the 1 minute trigger to cross. So that was a mistake on my part. So, you know, that's something you always got to look out for. Okay, so AMC looks like it's getting hammered right now. GME still holding above the hourly trigger. Again, we're going to have our answer on direction as soon as the 1 minute trigger comes down to the 5 and then, you know, bounces off to the upside. So let's see how that goes. check in on the Discord. Okay, so if you guys know how this works, the 2 week days to cover has just been skyrocketing. We're at like all-time highs now. Let's look at the Ortex chart. So yeah, for AMC, literally all-time highs in the 2 week days to cover. Let's see, GME. Yeah, the 3 month as well. So we do have, record low volume in, how do I get out of this? We do have record low volume in GME currently, and I do want to explain something. The more volume we have, the better a Nimoy works, because a Nimoy is a velocity terminal, and velocity has a lot to do with volume. And so, for example, when GME makes these monster moves, nothing is going to help you better than a Nimoy. But when there's very little volume and very little velocity, there's not much that a Nimoy can help you with besides small little scalps. But a Nimoy becomes invaluable once volume comes back, which should happen, pretty shortly. All right, so the hourly trigger is at 25.50. GME is at 25.50. We have positive hourly velocity. So the hourly trigger, we do expect to hold as support. And even if price comes down, we can expect price to be pulled back up the whole next hour. Another thing we can do is look at 1 minute velocity as price sells down. So as price nears the hourly trigger, you want to know that there's buying going on. And so this isn't divergence because this is a higher low, but if price would make a low at 25.64 and then price would make a lower low at, let's say 25.40, but the 1 minute velocity would be diverging bullishly, then that would mean that there are buyers stepping in at this hourly trigger and we can expect price to rise back above. So let's see, looks like SPY is getting hammered right here. And GME did sell below the hourly trigger. So wow, this is a nasty fake out to start the morning. We're probably gonna come back and fill this entire gap, which isn't a bad thing in a macro sense. If we come back down and just fill this, we could probably lift right after we tag 25.33-ish. And then, we do have a pull back to the hourly trigger this entire hour. So price is not going to have an easy time selling down in this hour. So the one thing we got to just watch for is the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger. We want an airplane to form, and we don't want the 1 minute trigger to just cross down below the 5 minute trigger. All right, anybody have any questions on anything I went over or Nimoy in general? Andrea said, how are you setting option stop losses by underlying stock price? I had to step away from the stream. What was the answer? So the way I do it, let's say I'm buying a break above the hourly trigger. So GME is, let's say, at 25.30, and then it pops above 25.47. And let's say the contract that I buy is $100. What I'll do is, if price is, let's say, 25.50, and I buy a contract for $100 and I know the hourly trigger is 3 cents below, then I'll just set a stop loss for, let's say, 0.93. And this way, if price sells below the hourly trigger, I know my stop loss will get hit. And I give myself some breathing room because sometimes the hourly trigger isn't to the penny. Vim says, you reckon we hit 40 this month? I reckon that once we can pop above the daily trigger, which I think I showed before was 25. Here, let's just bring it up. So Vim, we need volume. When volume comes back, there's a lot of potential here to rip to the upside. But we also need this weekly trigger not to cross below the monthly trigger. So that's really important. If the weekly trigger crosses below the monthly, it changes the whole macro outlook on a Nimoy and things become a lot more bearish on the longer term chart. But if the weekly trigger could come down to the monthly trigger and then airplane off it, so price would have to move back above 31.54, then, then we can see magic happen. So I'll just show you over here. You see how the weekly trigger was coming down to the monthly trigger, down, 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 and right here it made it slow at 33.10. And then look what happened once it started lifting. Once the weekly trigger started lifting off the monthly trigger, price had this monster move to the upside. So what we need right now is for price to be able to move back above the weekly trigger. And once that happens, the weekly trigger will start lifting off the monthly trigger. And then, yeah, we can reach 40 with ease. We can reach 50, we can reach 60. If we can move back above the weekly trigger and volume comes back, we can move to all-time highs. But right now we're struggling with a lack of volume and, likely a lack of interest. Okay, so it looks like GME just came down and filled the entire gap. Okay, so that's what happened. The Dow Jones, right, came up to the hourly trigger and there was negative hourly velocity. So this is a shorting opportunity. Whenever anything comes up to the hourly trigger with negative hourly velocity, that's almost always, it's called a whack-a-mole setup. This is where you want to short against the hourly trigger. The IYT as well. So it's coming up to the hourly trigger with strong negative velocity. That's going to reject. SPY is, still drifting sideways. Lots of chop in this range. Vim asks, what do you think is causing the lack of volume? I don't know. I wish I had the answer for that. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. I don't pay too much attention to this stuff. I mostly pay attention to, strictly the price action. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this. To me, it's interesting. To me, it's kind of strange. I don't know why we have record low volume. I did hear an interesting theory. Let me know what you guys think about this. So someone told me it's retail capitulation. Now, that doesn't mean that retail started selling, but more of retail stopped buying. So, whoever's in this thing is in this thing, but there haven't really been a new movement of new buyers join. And so it's just like stagnation where retail isn't buying, retail isn't selling. There's no outside interest in the stock. And so it's just, a standoff, who blinks first. So it looks like that's what we're looking at now. All right, so we are fighting a pretty ugly market right now. But again, GME has positive hourly velocity, so we do expect price to be pulled back above 25.50 this entire hour. So let's keep an eye on that. Right now, price is 25.31. We want to see price move back above 25.50 with positive hourly velocity, and that can very possibly get a run forming. Let's check in on AMC, because sometimes, you can see direction looking at one for the other. So Carrick says dark pool on DRS and retail just holding and watching. Yeah, I mean, that would be my guess as well, something like that. Okay, so I want to show you guys something interesting about AMC here. So we can see some pretty clear hourly divergence. So let's zoom in on this entire period and I'll show you guys what I mean, because I think AMC is going to be able to move back up pretty strongly very soon. So you see how the strongest hourly velocity print to the downside was right here at negative 0.494, and price at that time was 6.41. And then right here, price made one new low, but hourly velocity didn't. So this would be your first bullish divergence because price is making a new low while the hourly velocity is not. And then right here, price makes its second new low, but the hourly velocity does not make a new low. So that's your second bullish divergence. And currently, price is making its third new low, and the hourly velocity is negative 0.44, while here it was negative 0.49. And so you have 1, 2, 3 bullish divergence on the hourly level. And so I am thinking that, this might be a very strong turning point low for AMC. So if this new low holds, I think AMC will be able to come roaring out of this hole. So what I'm going to look at to play this is the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger. As soon as the 1 minute trigger can cross above the 5 minute trigger, which might actually take a little while here, that's when I'd expect AMC to be able to, attack 650 and maybe a whole lot higher, and maybe come soaring out of this hole. So look at this, guys. You see how GME is at 25.58 right now? So because GME sold below the hourly trigger, but there was positive hourly velocity, we expected the hourly trigger to act as a magnet and pull price back up above the hourly trigger. And with GME at 25.62 right now, that's exactly what happened. So you guys now understand how this works. When there was negative hourly velocity and price came back above the hourly trigger, the hourly trigger pulled price all the way back down. When there was positive hourly velocity and price sold under the hourly trigger, price was pulled back above the hourly trigger. So, that's what makes the hourly trigger different than SMAs and EMAs, because with velocity, you already know how it's going to act. So you guys understand all that? All right. So JP asked, what does BBBY look at? So let's take a look at it together, and I'll show you guys how I would start an analysis if I was looking at the chart for the first time right now. So here is the original short. Price breaks below the hourly trigger at 650, and look at this selling, right? So this is how the hourly trigger can really protect you if you're a buy and hold kind of person, right? You don't like messing around with options. It's too volatile for you. You like your shares, and you like just trading out of shares. Then what you can do is you can just trade in and out of your position on crosses of the hourly trigger. So when price breaks the hourly trigger right here, you can sell your position, okay? And when price breaks above the hourly trigger, you can buy it right back. And you do this for a couple of months, you'll find that you'll have 10 times the amount of shares you previously had. So that's what makes the Nemo worth it. And this chart is actually completely free, this hourly trigger. So, you can really use this to your advantage to buy and sell in and out of your position. So let's see, the most extreme hourly print was right here at negative 0.043, and price at the time was 510. So here's your first bullish divergence, right? You guys can all tell this is bullish divergence because price here makes a new low, but the hourly velocity does not. And then when price makes this new low, that's your second bullish divergence. So if BBBY makes one more low and the hourly velocity does not exceed negative 0.043, that's your sign to go long. And usually you'll get a sharp, fast market attack of the hourly trigger at 537. That also makes weeklies a great play. So, okay, so GME, really just not much movement here. Did volume die after that original pop to the upside? Let's take a look. Yeah, so it looks like volume has just been slowly drifting off. And we are experiencing a pretty annoying lag. So the data feed is skipping. So this happens once a month. I think it's once a month on the same day actually. So it might be the 12th of every month, but usually it works a whole lot more smooth. If you guys use it, then you know what I'm talking about. But it's just annoying that it happened on the one day that I decided to stream, because we can't really track where the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger are going. But GME, you see, still above the hourly trigger, 25.69. So here, look at this wick down, right? You see this wick down? This is what you get when price sells below the hourly trigger with positive hourly velocity. These kind of wicks, because the hourly trigger is just pulling price up. So the buying algos, all these algos that bought the stock and pushed it back up, you knew they were there because of the positive hourly velocity. with positive hourly velocity, Nemo is telling you that there's so many buy algos waiting right below this hourly trigger. And so it takes the guesswork out of trading, because you know that if price sells below, that's a buy signal. Sir Poker says, great stream, very informative, slowly learning about the triggers and velocity. That's awesome, man. If you ever have any questions, you can always feel free to reach out. So I'm just going to check back in to the Discord. Okay, guys, so I'm probably going to get off in about 5 minutes because nothing much is happening. And I think I kind of went over most of what I wanted to explain. So again, thankfully we're able to show some beautiful examples of the hourly trigger and the hourly velocities working in both directions. So just to recap, maybe if anybody just joined, in this hour, we had negative hourly velocity. So when price broke above the hourly trigger, we knew it had a magnet back down to the hourly trigger. And then you can't see it here yet because there's a drop of a lag. But when price sold below the hourly trigger, because we had positive hourly velocity, we knew price wanted to pick back up. So I'll show it to you over here. The hourly trigger, I'll draw a line. The hourly trigger was at 25.47. And when price sold below, do you see how quickly it snapped right back up? That's because of the positive hourly velocity. So if GME starts doing anything, I'll be right back on, guys. And I'm trying to see what's up with this data lag. If we can get it fixed, then we can see what the 1 minute triggers and the 5 minute triggers are doing. Actually, this is getting interesting. So take a look at this for a second. So you see how the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger are now 20 cents apart. So if the 1 minute trigger comes down to the 5 minute trigger and then pops off, watch this live because that means price is about to leg up big time. So keep a very close eye on this, guys. DJ Sutton, G-Force, says he hopped in some AMC $7 options for next week. So I do think there's a lot of potential for that play to work out for you. And the reason is, like I just showed, AMC has 3 bullish hourly divergences. And so that tells us that there are buyers that are about to come swooping in for AMC and push price back up to 650, the hourly trigger. So again, your strongest negative print was right here at -4.9. And then price at that time was 641. And then here's your first divergence, here's your second divergence, and here's your third divergence. So if I had to make one call and walk away for 2 weeks, I'd say that AMC at a price of 575 was the bottom for now. I don't think we're going to make any new lows for AMC for the time being. So, if you're trying to bottom pick right now, I think this is a great idea. And then you can stop out if price makes a new low. So let's say you buy some AMC calls right now. You can stop out at like 565 for very minimal risk to reward ratio. All right, guys, I'm going to hop off. And if it gets interesting again, I'll be right back on. If you're watching this live, just look for the 1 minute trigger to come down to the 5 minute trigger and then to bounce right back off it. And that'll tell you that GME is about to make another move higher. All right, enjoy, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in.